This is the Law and Crime Network. Michael Bryant here. Hey, when I used to try cases, I would say a surprise a day. That's what I would do, and I think that's what's happening now as we get into the Alec Baldwin Rust case. And, you know, everybody's got gloves on. I think for some reason, I better get one going here. You never know what's going to happen. So, as you know, we are covering on this wonderful Friday the latest trial, and we're going to kick things off with Santa Fe, New Mexico. Boy, Alec Baldwin, the actor and producer, charged with involuntary manslaughter in the fatal movie set shooting of Rust DP, cinematographer Halyna Hutchins. She was struck and killed. That bullet also injured Joel Souza. He was the director. He was on the set right with her. Baldwin has pleaded not guilty to the involuntary manslaughter charge, of course, and he claims he did not. No, did not pull the trigger. He says that he thought the gun was cold. Baldwin was also co-producer on the Rust film. And we know that the judge has ruled out any sort of evidence relating to the producer role, which was such a huge win for the defense. So that stuff's not going to be admitted. At this point, remember, always subject to further consideration by the court as this thing unfolds and if the door is open. So only his role as an actor at this point is going to be allowed into the case. So he's looking at up to 18 months in prison. The Rust armorer, of course, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, already found guilty of involuntary manslaughter, same charge, sentenced to the max, 18 months in prison. She was expected to testify, but then she wasn't, and then she was. Well, now she's out again. So let's go back into court. This is the surprise a day I mentioned. The defense has motioned for a mistrial, citing violations in the case by the prosecution, Brady violations. They say that the prosecution concealed important evidence from the defense. Now, this pertains to the ammunition that was brought to the scene. Ms. Popple, Marissa Popple, she's the crime scene technician. She's been caught in a number of misrememberings, I'll call them. But is this just a smoke and mirrors distraction by the defense to get you looking at something other than Alec Baldwin? I don't know. Let's go back into court and see where we are.
I'll ask the question a third time. He didn't just turn in shells, did he?
He turned in multiple .45 rounds.
Including rounds that matched the round that struck Ms. Hutchins, right?
Again, I wouldn't use the word match without further analysis.
And the reason that we don't have further analysis is you all didn't send this to the FBI for further analysis, did you?
We did not.
Right? Because if you had, it would have potentially proven the fact that all along this ammunition did come from Seth Kenney. Isn't that true?
What I was informed of by Mr. Teskey was that the ammunition originated from Joe Swanson.
And then went in the green ammo can to Seth Kenney.
I do not recall him speaking about a green ammo can.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. You know, the other thing that you're saying, I took you at first to be saying, well, it's just a bunch of ammunition, and now we've gotten to the point where it's actually the same type of ammunition. And then you've also stated in your testimony that it's like, well, there's just this guy, Troy Teskey, that just walks into the office like it's random. When really Mr. Teskey and his involvement in this case was very well known to law enforcement, correct?
I had never heard his name before.
Okay, but he came in and he said, I'm here to give evidence about the Rust case, right?
He stated that he had evidence the defense had wanted and he no longer wanted to hang on to it.
Well,
and he was the one using the word evidence.
Okay. You said to him when you met him down at the first floor of the precinct, you were called because you were the person in charge of the evidence, the CST, right?
Yes.
Okay. And he said, thank goodness it's you. You're the perfect person to take this because you know all about the Rust case. And you said, I know all about the Rust case, right?
I don't recall that.
Do you deny that?
No.
Okay. And then he said, to you, this ammunition was in Seth Kenney's possession, and you said Seth Kenney's law enforcement is well aware of Mr. Kenney, right?
I don't recall that.
So you take this ammunition on March 6th, right?
Yes.
The standard operating procedure for the Santa Fe Police Department says you're supposed to make your report within 24 hours, right?
Correct.
Okay. So tell the court, did you make your report within 24 hours?
I'm fairly certain that our SOP is that evidence should be submitted within 24 hours. I'm not certain on when the reports are supposed to be submitted.
So do you want to take your answer back that
Yes,
you
I
gave a minute
do.
ago?
I apologize, yes.
Well, we can enter that SOP into evidence. In this case, many times, there are police reports that are done the same day that the incident occurs. Can you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. How much longer after this revelation did you do your report?
I believe it was, I apologize. I can refer to my report to refresh my memory. Oh, I have a copy. I believe it was the following month that the report was made.
Yeah, it was approximately a month later, right?
Yes.
Okay. What happened during that month? CST Papa.
To be fairly honest, I went out of town to visit my dying mother.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry to hear that. Were you out of town that entire month?
I don't believe it was the entire month, no.
Okay. Who was involved in the word choice in this report?
Myself?
You didn't have any input? Because this doesn't look like the same language you use in the other reports.
Well, on a normal basis, I don't have conversations with people involved in cases.
Uh-huh. But there was also other officers there that were aware of this. Corporal Hancock was aware of this, correct?
She was notified about it, yes.
Okay, and so was your supervisor who was there with you, correct?
Yes.
So you're not telling me and this court that you had no input at all in the drafting of this document, are you?
It was reviewed by my supervisor. I don't believe any corrections were made to it or requested by him.
You know, it's just, there's a funny sentence in it. It says, it's a sentence I've never seen in a police report. You tell me if you've ever seen this in a police report in your entire career. It says, it should be noted that this is not actual evidence from the death investigation collected by SO detectives.
You are not reading my section of the report. You're reading what was written by Lieutenant Brian Brandel.
Ah, I was going to say, it doesn't look like you're writing. So the lieutenant writes in, thank you for clarifying that. I just got this report, as you know, right? The lieutenant writes in, it should be noted that this is not actual evidence from the death investigation collected by SFSO detectives. Did I read that right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. In your career, going back to when you were at CST in Florida, all the way through the present, have you ever seen such a sentence in a police report in your entire career?
Not that exact sentence, no.
Yeah, me neither. So you're, if you could just look at this report for a second and help clarify for me which parts of this you filled out versus the lieutenant.
The section that starts at the top with my name.
Well, let's just go page by page.
That would be page 5.
After this occurred, did this cause you concern, CST Popple, that this was handled this way?
It did not.
And as I asked you yesterday, you actually said when you were meeting with Mr. Teskey, this is the ammunition that we've been looking for from the Rust set, didn't you?
I don't recall stating that.
But you're not denying that.
I'm not denying it.
So I don't know whether the most critical evidence in this case is the gun that was sent off to be destroyed or the round that killed Ms. Hutchins. It probably is the round that killed Ms. Hutchins. Would you agree with that those are probably the two most important pieces of evidence in this entire case?
I'm sorry, can you please restate your
Sure.
long question?
Sure. Would you agree with me that the two most critical items in this case from an evidentiary perspective were probably the firearm in question and the live ammunition that struck Ms. Hutchins, right?
I would say the firearm and the live ammunition from the set.
Okay. And so the firearm, which we've had hearings, discussions about, was ultimately broken beyond repair by law enforcement, right?
Was broken by the FBI lab.
Okay. And the report that was issued by the experts for the prosecution about that firearm and whether or not it had been modified before was buried also by the prosecutors, correct?
I do not know about that report.
Okay, and then we can turn to this second most critical piece of evidence in this case. And this was also buried by law enforcement, correct?
No.
No, it wasn't. Okay. Were you in the precinct when the evidence viewing occurred with the defense? I think you said yesterday that your partner or your colleague dealt with the evidence viewing.
Yes, my colleague and Detective Hancock, I believe, were there.
But you didn't, nobody asked you to take this vouchered, sealed evidence out and show it to the defense, correct?
When the request was made, I believe they couldn't quite narrow down everything that they wanted to view. There was quite a bit.
Oh, so this was a narrowing down issue? The reason that this wasn't shown to the defense is a narrowing down issue?
No, I'm stating that they couldn't quite tell me in detail what they wanted to see.
The request from the defense of all ammunition was taken by law enforcement to not mean the ammunition that you recovered that matched the ammunition that struck Ms. Hutchins?
I don't believe they looked at all the ammunition that day.
Well, no, but the request was all ammunition. So I'm asking you, did law enforcement interpret that request to not include this critical evidence?
All of the items that were pulled for the case were under the Rust case number.
Which was a perfect plan.
You're asking me if there was a plan?
Well, I'm saying, whether there was or there wasn't, it worked out pretty well, right?
I'm not sure what you're getting at. There was a request to view the evidence from Rust. That is the evidence that was pulled.
Well, your report says this is evidence from Rust, and then it just puts it under a different case number, and the lieutenant then writes that sentence in saying this isn't evidence from Rust, right?
My report states that Mr. Teskey believed that it was related to Rust, and then I listed the case number next to that.
Do you remember when we started my examination of you yesterday, how I sort of said to you, the way you know what evidence to find is by what people tell you? Do you remember that?
Yes.
And that when you're at a burglary and somebody says, oh, you better pick up that glove, you don't know that that person's telling the truth or not, but you pick up the glove, right?
Depending on the circumstances of the case, possibly.
And here, a retired member of law enforcement walks into the precinct who's known to law enforcement, who turns in the matching ammunition, who tells you it's involved in the case, where there's tons of corroboration, both by what he provides and the history that law enforcement knows about this man, and you put it under a different case number, right?
I'm sorry, what was your question in that long statement?
You put it under a different case number.
Yes, as I was instructed to do so.
Okay, so you need to finish up so that Ms. Morrissey can cross-examine.
Yeah, I'm trying to review this in real time. So I will pass the witness. in a moment. Just 1 second, Ron. Oh, and I asked you this yesterday, but I want to ask again, which is, you told Mr. Teskey that you would write up a report because of how important this was the very same day, didn't you?
I don't recall stating the very same day.
You don't deny that, though, do you?
I don't deny it, but I don't recall it.
Okay, nothing further. For the record, that was State's Exhibit 29 that showed the witness.
All right, are we going to admit the supplemental into evidence?
Please.
Well, somebody move it in. I started the conversation. But
Defend, is it a court exhibit or just mark as defense? It's just,
I think it's, well, since I started it, are you okay with court's exhibit?
that's fine with me, and I think it gets confused.
However you want to handle it.
All right, court's exhibit what?
Come back.
All right, thank you. And it is, any objection?
No, certainly not.
Go ahead.
If I can just pause for a moment and just address the court. Here's what I'm intending to do. Obviously, this is a serious dispositive matter. A full record needs to be laid. I have Mr. Kinney on his way over. He'll be here any minute. We intend to take testimony from him. I also intend to take testimony from Mr. Bowles.
Here's what we're going to
Judge, I have to make a record, though.
Well, just a minute.
Okay.
The issue is the disclosure, okay?
I understand.
All right, so,
That's why I want to call these people, is it goes to the heart of the disclosure. So all I'm asking the court for,
well, we don't have time for this. So what I'm going to do, for example, like with Hancock, I'm going to have her get up on the stand and continue testifying about the case, and then this...
Okay, so that happened, which, by the way, was a famous Alec Baldwin line written by David Mamet in one of his movies. So is this mistrial going to happen? Is it the jury has been sent home for the day, for the weekend? They'll be back on Monday. We will be back much quicker, though. Stay where you are. Coming right back after this break.